are back talking Dat Vedanta. And if this is your first time listening to the Daily Vedantic, one of the nicknames that Vedanta has acquired through this project of a daily reflection, one of the nicknames is Vedanta. And if you can't get on board with that, then I don't know. Maybe this ain't the spot for you. But if you can get on board with that, if you've been dying to get on board with that, to approach philosophy with cheer and joy and not just dogmatic reverence, but feeling like this is a playground for development, a jungle gym of development, then you found the right spot. Because we talk in Dat Vedanta here. Within this philosophy, there is such a strong importance placed on rising above our feelings. Not suppressing, never suppressing or repressing your feelings, your emotions, but not being governed by them. 10 years ago, I went to see my doctor, and my heart had been beating for 175 beats a minute for apparently 3 weeks. By the time I had seen him, I told him, hey, it feels like I've butterflies in my stomach. And I've had this feeling for about 3 weeks. And they ran tests, found out that I had a heart condition and that I needed to go right after that appointment, needed to go across the street to the ER to have my heart shocked back into rhythm with those paddles that you see in movies, TV shows, called a cardioversion. And this condition that I had formed was from excess stress, an addiction to caffeine, 6 to 7 cups of coffee a day, and burnout. Everything I was doing was, as I've said in previous episodes, it felt like I was trying to push the pedal forward, and yet the car would inevitably go in reverse. Nothing would go as expected. And working 7 days a week, 12, 15 hours a day did not seem, for years, did not seem to right the ship. I felt like I was doing everything right, and yet everything was turning out wrong. I would end up going on medication for the heart condition, and about 3 months later, I went back to my doctor and scheduled an appointment because I said, it feels like something's wrong. And he said, okay, let's run the tests. And they ran several tests, and he said, everything looks normal. Everything's looking good, actually. With the help of the medication, I'm sure. But everything was looking good according to the tests. And I said, I don't know, doc, something just feels off. And I'll never forget his deadpan reaction to that. He looked back at me and he said, it might feel that way, but it doesn't mean it is that way. Everything looks great according to the tests. Within about an hour of leaving the office, the existential dread, this knot in my mind created by my mind, is just gone. I was no longer stressing about kind of phantom heart issues because the tests and an expert showed me that no, everything was good. And frankly, that was one of the most influential experiences of my life, where an expert with true knowledge of the situation instead of just my sensing or sensations and uninformed perception, when the expert looked at me and said, you might feel that way, but it doesn't mean it is that way. Of course, there are areas in our lives where emotions take over and we know we're being misled, hijacked by our emotions. Something we say while we're angry. A feeling we can't shake because we are sad or in fear of something happening to us or someone we love. We can have the objectivity to recognize this emotion. Oh my God, this is taking over my life, or took me over. or took over an instant and I said something I wish I hadn't. And there is that aspect of reconciling what we're feeling and really understanding what we're feeling, not suppressing it. Swami will say often at the ashram that there must be a conference of the head and the heart, that you must understand what you feel, and you must feel to understand. Anyone can scholastically recite verses from an ancient text. Anyone can recite. My 5-year-old, she's 6 now, but I remember when she was 5, she told her little sister she'd be able to rattle off the rules. No toys at the dinner table to her little sister. But she wouldn't be able to follow the rules most of the time. She'd be so quick to tell her little sister at 2 years old that she needed to go to timeout if she hit, and yet 20 minutes later, she'd be doing the hitting. We can know things without really feeling them. And it's important that we feel them. That you don't just say, yeah, I love my spouse or my children, but to really cultivate a feeling of identification with them. To really feel identified with them. Similarly, we can have emotions that we don't understand. A friend of mine recently was saying that the biggest learning he's had in the last year is recognizing that when he's angry, most of the time he doesn't even realize he's angry until his spouse points it out. So we need this conference of the head and the heart. And we need to understand what we feel and feel to understand. We must know what's going on the emotional level, and we must feel on an emotional level any of the virtues we might spout off to a friend or a younger sibling. You must really feel them to really understand them. And we are told that the presence of an emotion that's human in this philosophy. It is human to have emotions. It is absolutely natural. But what is unnatural is to be governed by them, where they are doing the leading instead of our intellect jumping in, saying, you know what, I don't need to say this thought that I have. Or even better, I don't even need to think this, entertain this thought driven by emotion. I've had enough of this wallowing, and I'm going to get up and interrupt this thought flow by doing something different. That is the intellect getting involved. But what is less discussed within this philosophy when it comes to emotion is that we often feel things that aren't so. And these are the highest, subtlest concepts within this philosophy. To feel something that isn't so. And to redirect that feeling towards knowledge of the self. What is an example of this? An example of this is to feel like I need to make X, Y, or Z happen in my life to be happy. You might feel that if I'm not looking out for myself, then no one's going to look out for me. It might feel that way, but that's not the way it is. When you start to look out for others, that community will never let you go because you're one of the rare individuals that does so. You might feel like, well, I'm just poor little old me. I can't make much of a change, much of an impact. And I'm certainly not able to entertain some of the larger concepts that a philosophy like Vedanta tells us, which is, you are that. You are what it's all about. who you really are deep down is that supreme being that you've been searching for your whole life. And if your response to something like that is, well, it doesn't feel that way, maybe enter some daylight into the equation to say maybe how it is different than how I currently feel. I'm not saying toss that notion aside. But what I am saying is question, wonder, recount the times that you felt something and it wasn't the way it was. Maybe this is one of those times. Maybe right now, how you feel, whether it's limited in your ability to achieve, because what we're told by this philosophy is maybe how it feels is not how it is. How it feels might be, just might be, very different from how it actually is. The more space we're able to create between how we feel and how it might be, the more we're able to detach from our emotions driving the bus in every situation in life. And the more we're able to do that, the more clearly we might be able to see what is right in front of us. That's today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Daily Vedantic. This reflection is part of a free repeating 2-year course in Advaita Vedanta. Rooted in the timeless wisdom of the Upanishads, arguably the oldest philosophical texts on earth, you can begin with episode 1, which gives the 15-minute overview of the whole philosophy of Vedanta, or you can join the journey with any episode at any point. But the critical aspect of this course, of understanding and mastering anything, is to study and reflect, even for 10 to 15 minutes on the timeless each day, preferably at the start of your day. As is said in this philosophy, reflection is 100,000 times as powerful as listening. So listen, journal, sit with, discuss these concepts, or ask questions at thedailyvedantic.com with our AI-powered chatbot, informed by about 700 episodes here, as regularly as one can, if you want to see clarity and peace almost effortlessly unfold in your daily life. And if it doesn't result in a near immediate increase in clarity and peace, then toss aside and feel free to never listen again. One of the things that you might notice is after 7 or 8 days in a row, this doesn't feel like a discipline. This feels like a visit with a best friend to dive into the timeless with daily reflection. Within a few days, it becomes one of your favorite parts of the day. You can also find out more, including news about in-person events in Los Angeles and beyond, at the Daily Vedantic on Instagram, or through our weekly newsletter at thedailyvedantic.com. Additionally, check out the links in our show notes for more resources like the books that are mentioned most frequently in the episodes, including Vedanta Treatise, perhaps the simplest and most straightforward read on this philosophy I've ever come across. Until next time, and from the entire team that works on the Daily Vedantic project, thanks for listening.